Ever since I was a little kid, I enjoyed mechanical work. Uh, One time, I don't remember how old I was, 6, 7 maybe. I found a little broken 3/8-inch drill bit and was able to put it in a carpenter's brace and drill a hole in a piece of metal. And man, that was a big deal for me. And Daddy had a blacksmith shop right behind the house, but they didn't use it much. My grandfather was a pretty good farm blacksmith, at least what some people have told me. Um, I have his old anvil, and it is way back. I saw one time, and I don't remember whether it was Daddy or whether it was my grandfather, who did some blacksmithing in that shop. I was still, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, and they wouldn't let me get within 20 feet of the shop. Then the next thing happened, they tore the shop down, built a concrete block garage, and that was as I look back, that was a terrible loss for me, but at the time I didn't know it. I tried to build some go-karts, and later on I did build a garden tractor from scratch, but that was quite a few years later. But I had always liked metalworking. One of my jobs was to mow the yard, push lawnmower, one of those old push lawnmowers. I didn't like pushing that thing at all, so I set up me a little makeshift lathe and made 2 plywood pulleys, bolted them onto each side of that push lawnmower, put a little platform on it and a jack shaft, found an old electric motor, of course I'd found that before, and some number 10 solid core electric wire, and with pretty hard, brittle insulation on it. So I rigged up that lawnmower where I could have the motor power it and drag that electric cord all over the yard. Of course, the only time I could mow is when it was too wet to work in the fields. So I ended up getting bit by the leaks in the insulation a few times there. Later on, the first rotary lawnmower I ever saw was one I made myself. I saw a picture of it in Popular Mechanics or Popular Science 1, and I took that blade off of the push lawnmower and cut a hole in it and put it on the shaft and made a workable rotary lawnmower.
About that time decided you wanted to go to school for engineering, or that happened sometime during high school years?
Well, I didn't know the high schools then, or maybe all of them, maybe just the one I was at, didn't do a good job at all of acquainting you with what jobs were available or what you could do or anything there. So raised on a farm, I kind of knew I was going to go to Auburn. I liked Auburn. I was a valedictorian in my high school class. I had gone to Auburn for some sort of little meeting or something, and from the farm, and I didn't know, I signed up for agricultural science, which I guess was farming. But it didn't take me long to change to agricultural engineering because I knew engineering, when I got exposed to a little bit more stuff, I knew that engineering was a little closer to what I wanted to do. So in high school, we built a little tractor just for show. It wasn't a real working tractor. It was just a little project we had to show off in the auditorium one day. A couple of other guys and I did that. So later on, after I'd been in the Army, Von Braun was in Huntsville, Alabama with his team, and they were building rockets and things. So I thought I had to have a mechanical engineering degree to get a job there, so I went back to Auburn on the GI Bill for that. But it turned out if you could spell the word engineer, they would have hired you as an engineer. So I wasted a year and a half there, but no big deal. It came out all right.
How did you get back into black?
Okay, I had Granddaddy's anvil, and I'd set up a little shop after Daddy built a house for me. And so I'd set up a shop, and I had the anvil. I never did have a forge. I didn't realize. I kept looking in the library for books on blacksmithing, but the ones they had seemed to be always checked out. So I kept working in metal, and of course blacksmithing was pretty much a natural way to move metal. What I had been doing was just sawing and drilling to put things together, and I could have done a better job. But in Huntsville, Alabama, was Constitution Hall Village. It was where the original Constitution for the state of Alabama was written, but they had a lot of old works and things there. And Barbara Batson was the secretary of the Alabama Forge Council. Jim Batson, who was the president, was off on a trip overseas working for the Army. But anyway, I had finally found the blacksmiths. So I bought a bunch of books, and I watched them demonstrate, and I got to set me up a forge, and I got to buy a vise. And one of the books I was in had a picture of a treadle hammer, and another one, some guys up in Minnesota had designed and built a treadle hammer. So, and I was starting to try to work a little metal at home, and I figured, okay, you got to have the hammer in one hand, you got to have a tool in the other hand, and you got to be able to move the metal around. You don't have three hands. So that was in October. By Christmas, I had designed my version of the treadle hammer, and then Jim Batson started teaching a class Friday night, January and February, and then he came up here and was teaching a class on making tools, and I took that class. My wife and I had driven through here, I think it was in January of that year, and we found the folk school and stopped, but the folk school was closed in January in those years. So then once I got started here taking classes, I took all my vacation here taking classes, and my wife Jackie was coming along taking classes too. And so that was really how I got started, is after Jim's class. most of all my classes were in the Whitaker shop.
When you first followed the gym up here, this shop was pretty rough. It leaked really badly, and it smoked really badly. And you were part of that team of people
Yeah,
that redesigned that whole shop, weren't you?
yeah,
Made it a lot more
yeah. Yeah, when it rained, there would be a water flowing through the shop.
Yeah.
There was a silo base about where the instructor's forge area is now, but somehow the water would get into the shop and run down through the shop. Francis always liked dirt floors. He didn't like walking on a hard floor or even a brick floor. The original shop had concrete floor in it, and he put dirt on top of that because he wanted a dirt floor. Bert Smith and I started the Blacksmith Work Week. That's another thing that, to me, has been really great. Bert Smith was a school teacher from over in Greensboro, North Carolina. We became very close friends, and our wives became good friends. We always wanted to try to improve the shop. So Bert and I, the first year, we had individual blowers for each forge. Some were hand crank blowers, some of them were loud mechanical blowers, and it was pretty much of a mess to keep all of that going there. And so the first thing we did is decided to put a pipe inside the corner of the shop and a blower outside, blowing through the wall and furnishing air for all 6 forges on one side. We would want to try it to see if it would work. And it worked really well. So we got that put in, just the 2 of us. Then the next year, we got, I think it was 13 blacksmiths. We stayed in Hubble House, and my wife Jackie and Bert's wife Jessie cooked for us over in Hubble House. And I don't remember if that was just a weekend. I think it was just a weekend that we had to work, but we got a lot more work done on the shop, improving things and getting the vices fixed up better and the anvil stands adjustable, and just anything that needed fixing and adding. And the school saw what we could do, and I asked them, okay, give us a week and we'll come and work for food and room if you furnish that. So Francis would, about 4:30, it was beer 30 for him. He'd go out front and have a beer, and then that was he would stop working then. We would come back at night and work.
He had enough credibility that he could break the school rule. But
I don't know that the school had rules back then about it.
my mother-in-law was on the board, and it was her rule.
Okay. signed up for Francis Whitaker's class first year, but advanced class. You had to be, his requirement was you had to be able to forge weld, you had to be able to make a square corner, and you had to be able to form a scroll on the anvil with a hammer. And so I signed up for the class, but I had heard Walt and Charlie, he'd cuss you out for a little bit of nothing. And do I want to take a class from that old SOB and have him cuss me out? I don't want to do that. But anyway, I signed up for the class. And it turned out he was having a hip replaced, and Tom Joyce taught the class. And Tom Joyce is just a fantastic young blacksmith that he beat anything I ever saw. But I was fortunate to be in his class, and I made a king-size headboard with about 5 trees on it and about 70, probably around 70 forged welds in it. Classes then in the advanced class was a 2-week class then, so you could get bigger projects done. And then next April, Francis was back and I signed up for his class. The first thing he ever said to me that I recall on Tuesday right before lunch, "Are you beyond help?" I hadn't asked him a question. And he didn't know I had been in Tom's class, I guess, and some of the others. But he didn't like people with beards, and I was wearing long sleeves. He didn't like people that had long sleeves on, but anyway, did pretty good in his class. That I built a railing for the house I lived in then. And again, it had, I don't know, 70, 80 forged welds on it. I brought my treadle hammer to the class and set it up and I had, in those crossbars there, I had something would pull out to hold a long piece of stock, because in the class I'd built with Tom was a headboard that had 1-inch square stock, and some of the pieces were 6 feet long. So Francis saw it, Rube Goldberg. But I kept on and worked the treadle hammer, and I was working by myself. He always had a striker whenever he needed some help to help him. The treadle hammer was my striker. I could hold the metal, hold the tool, and step on the treadle. 65-pound hammerhead come down. So, and second time in Francis' class, he said, if I was a younger man, after he saw what I could do with it, I would get me one of those and learn how to use it. So, after a while, I got to be his assistant and worked with him more, and I always went out there every year. He had a conference at his shop in Colorado every year, and Jack and I always went out there.
That was a period of time when there were a lot of really good instructors that came through here. Tom Joyce and myself, a list here: Peter Ross, Ivan Bailey, Noel Putnam, Jim Batson, of course.
I took all their classes.
So there are some really fine classes.
Oh yeah.
In that space, and great students too. You remember Walt Scadden and Charlie?
Yeah.
Weren't you kind of the same generation, you and Charlie? And
well, I was the Johnny-come-lately beginners. They were all pretty good blacksmiths before I started. And Francis A lot of them couldn't afford to come here for 2 weeks, and he helped them out with scholarships, and that was good. He had the second Thursday night of his class, he would hold an auction up in the Keith house to raise money for the to buy tools for the blacksmith shop. And he usually it was blacksmiths buying from each other, and the thing, we would all make something for the auction. Raised about $1,000 most of the times, as I remember. That one of the things that I'm proudest of is I had seen Tim Ryan and see what he could do with his mouth. He was a medicine doctor, had a little thing, and Jim Vatson, one day when our auctioneer didn't show up down at Tannehill. Well, Jim Batson had grabbed Tim. Okay, Tim, you're our auctioneer for tonight, and that started his auctioneer career. And then I got him to move the auction from Thursday night till Saturday, where more people could participate, and a lot of the other craftspeople or instructors at the school made things for the auction, and we started raising $10,000, $13,000 on a Saturday there. And of course the school said, "Oh, you can't have all that money for the blacksmith shop," and I don't blame them. It was the whole community was contributing.
You said when Francis was on the board, but then rotated off and suggested
he had decided to quit teaching here, and he was on the board there, and he and Fred Woodward, and once he decided to quit teaching, he, I guess one of the board meetings, he resigned from the board and recommended me to take his place. And the same week, he asked me to take over teaching his class here. He said, "You be my assistant 1 year, I'll be your assistant the next year, and then I'm gone." And then I took over the class, and been teaching it ever since. And that's
when you were on the board, there was some overlap between you and me.
Yep.
I was trying to remember when the discussion started about building this shop.
The timber frame instructor wanted to do a big building. And we knew that building was pretty crowded and maybe a little unsafe. And he kept pushing, and I give him credit for getting this building built. And the first design they came up with, they had a post like that one and that one every 10 feet. And I said, "No way. We can't work in a shop that has that many posts in it." So they redesigned it. But anyway, one day Jan was the director then, Jan Davidson. He came out and we talked about, okay, where would we put a new blacksmith shop? Would we put it over past the barn over across the road there, or would we put it up behind the orchard house maybe? And we came out here and looked at this area, 2 silos there, and so, well, connected to that shop and keep it would be a better arrangement for the whole thing to do that. So they just came up with a design that incorporated the 2 silos. One is a restroom and the other is a stairwell. And put this and started work. I guess the first thing, they leveled us out and made got the floor put down and everything done there. And in 2009, the Timber Frame Guild cut all the timber joints up in the festival barn. So they spent a week up there. I think it was about 30 of them. On a plaque over there on the wall, I have engraved their names and a thank you for Charles for leading the way to get the timber frame shop built.
Were you here when they assembled the timbers of
Yeah.
the frame?
We
And
had-
a whole bunch of us sitting on the bank up there.
Right.
watching them.
We had two cranes here, one crane over there, another one over here, and they had cut the timbers up there, brought them down here, and started installing. We had blacksmith work week that same week, so, and the timber framers were camped out and everything here. So it was a tremendous get together for a building raising, I guess you'd call it. All they did that week was put up the frame. Of course, then you had to put the roof and the walls and the wiring and the safety water system and all that in. So it took another couple of years, I think, before we ever got to have a class here. Paul Garrett was the resident artist here, and he did a tremendous job of setting up in the building, of course, we had to know where the flues were going to be before we set the forges in when they were putting the roof up and all that. So we got a tremendous library upstairs. Paul Moffett from Indiana donated his collection of books, and I'm going to donate some of mine. And one of my students by then was chairman of the Folk School Board, Julie Clark. She was from down in Georgia up on the mountain. Apparently she got the board to name this building for me as a great honor for me. Couldn't believe it. I would have preferred to have it called the Clay Spencer Forge of the Francis Whitaker Blacksmith Shop, but I wasn't in charge. At first, I didn't give the engineering credit for being helpful in blacksmithing, but then as time went along and I recognized I know more about the strength of the metal and the qualities of the metal than most people do that have just heated it and hammered it. I know what the strength is required for different things, and I'm proud of this tire hammer design too, because my original design is right there after quite a few years. Ray Klontz over in North Carolina came up with the concept of a pulley on the motor rubbing against a tire. And the first one I saw was built so rickety, I was scared of it. And then I decided, hey, this is something I could do like I did the treadle hammers. The treadle hammers, I would demonstrate them, and then a group would want to have a workshop to build treadle hammers. So I traveled all over the country except for Washington and Oregon and California and North Dakota, leading workshops to build tools, build hammers, and how to use hammers to make tools for the hammers. And so that was pretty good for me and Jackie to travel all over the country, Maine to Florida to Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and everywhere in between. So I've had a great time in blacksmithing. Apparently, I've helped a lot of different groups. I'm a life member of the Alabama Forge Council. I get the newsletter and don't have to pay dues. And that was because I was editor there for about 10 years. And then Blacksmith Association of Missouri, I'm a lifetime member there for all the workshops and the work I did with them. And a lifetime member of the Appalachian Area chapter in Tennessee and the North Carolina group. And one of the few lifetime members of Urbana. So I've been rewarded for the work I did, not trying to get the awards, but just because I was having fun and liked to teach and help people make tools for a reasonable price. And they did the work themselves, they bought the material, and I just went and showed them how to do it by my plans. So that's been a great time for me. One of the things I try to do is have a full-page list of things that every advanced blacksmith should know how to do these things. And in my classes, I cover all those items and try to at least expose them to it. Some of them we demonstrate and then they do it, and some of them is just talk about. And most of it came from Francis and his cookbook, and one of Francis' sayings, there's always a better way. And so Clay's better way sometimes is better, sometimes maybe not, but I always try to improve. Francis, last time he demonstrated out in Colorado, best thing he ever said about me, I think. You should always be striving for perfection, do the best you can, always try to do better and improve yourself. I'm not perfect, he says. Clay's not perfect, James is not perfect. Hey, he used me as the first example after him of not being perfect.
Is this one of the best teaching facilities that you know of in the country?
I've been to a few of them, and I talked to people that have been to others, like Elizabeth Belts is what's now not called a resident artist. She's been to more than I have. And yes, this is the best in the country. Yeah. There's not another one that's designed as well. Touchstone has a really nice facility, and Penland has a pretty good facility. I've never been to Southern Illinois Institute, a college or university that has a blacksmithing program, and I'm pretty sure they have a good one. But there's none like John C. Campbell's, and I've taught over 100 classes at the folk school in 50-something years being here. And these two blacksmith shops beat anything there is anywhere else in the country.
Is there something about the folk school philosophy that is contributed to the success of this place and your experience here?
Oh yeah, it's helping each other and doing the best you can, and all the non-competitive that works pretty good there, and just the whole way the folk school works. Community coming together for a week or weekend and having the meals together as family style, and just the whole philosophy of the folk school. So I told Barbara I'd be ready to come to their place about this time.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Well, thanks so much. It's been
well, is that the end of your question? Okay. Well,
I'd like to ask every blacksmith that is in the room to please, that came here to recognize Mr. Clay Spencer, to please come to the front if you would and stand and show that support for Clay. If you would, your blacksmith, come on up. What you're seeing are people who have been personally touched by the instruction or the techniques or both of Mr. Clay Spencer, who's here in the middle. If you'd stand and or turn around, Clay, and raise your hand.